I hope that doesn't interfere with the recording, because this will be recorded. Alert, alert, recording. No rude words from Cambridge at the back. Oh dear. So my name's James Preston. Full disclosure, I work for AN Security. We are a cybersecurity consultancy, and if I say we, I mean the royal we, as in AN Security we. However, today I'm here as James Preston, your friendly InfoSec person, and to demonstrate just how friendly I am, this whole presentation is going to be presented through a GitHub repo that at the end of the presentation I shall make public. And also I would like your comments, thoughts and feedback. So if you want something changed in this, if you've got a good idea, feel free to submit a pull request and I can go deny. Equally so, the recording, I'll stick on my personal blog, so myworldofit.net. That usually goes up an hour or two after I've finished processing it and finding out how fast the upload speed is on the Wi-Fi here. So a little bit unique style of presentation today. We don't have PowerPoint. We have the marvelous world of this GitHub repo. And the notion of this presentation is by the end, you're going to know a little bit how to defend yourself from zero-day vulnerabilities. I have 5 particular ways to do this. It's not 5 exclusive ways. There are more ways to defend yourself from zero-day vulnerabilities than just these 5. But ideally, when you're all returned back to your institutions, you should be able to take 1 or 2 of those things. And if your firewall says next generation firewall on the side, you might also be able to do some of them. If it says pfSense or Netgate, good luck, have fun. I'll look forward to hearing about your ransomware attack. So, what is zero-day vulnerability? Threats, that's the way to get them involved, right? So this is a vulnerability which is going to be under exploit, or perhaps under exploitation by persons unknown, and you just don't know about it yet. You don't know about it, the vendor doesn't know about it. It's something that can go horribly wrong, or something that's oh no, you can read a file that you shouldn't be able to read, right until you read that file and it happens to have an SQL database username and password in it. Now, one of the key things that I find about zero-day vulnerabilities is when one comes out, everyone goes, oh, that's an interesting thing. Let's go have a look at what other vulnerabilities we can find. So quite often, the generation of one zero-day vulnerability will result in many more in quick succession after it. Looking at Avanti, right? Apparently it was the Chinese. Chinese discovered the first vulnerability, and then loads and loads of other people went and found other vulnerabilities very quickly in Avanti, which allowed them to take over those appliances, do things that they shouldn't do. Now, one of the things to bear in mind is that these zero-day vulnerabilities aren't always going to be your biggest issue. We'll look at some of the numbers about that a little bit later. So, some zero days that made it into the news. Log4Shell in Log4j. This one introduced all the way back in 2013. So the code to exploit this vulnerability existed since 2013, but no one noticed it until someone made a private disclosure to Apache and said, hey, you've got this problem, let's go fix it. And then the entire world realized that Log4j was everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. If you had a wireless controller, Log4j. If you had a logging service, Log4j. If you had a web server, Log4j. If you had pretty much anything that used Apache software for logging in it somewhere, you were probably exposed to this vulnerability in some manner. Now, the crazy thing about that is what was really easy to exploit. All you needed to do is get the system to generate a particular request, and it would then go and reach out to an LDAP server of your definition on the internet, download what was ever on that LDAP server, and then execute it at system level permissions quite often on the box. So complete, easy, trivial remote takeover, right? And all you need to do is generate a log event. And that log event might simply be going to a web page and prompting it for a 404, typing in that command, typing in that little bit of exploit code, and that web server, when it again goes and logs it, it goes, oh look, there's some LDAP. I'll go execute that. So the problem with this one, of course, is it was widely used, lots of different appliances, and it was really, really easy, really trivial remote code execution vulnerability. Papercut, I know it hit Oxford a little bit, probably hit Cambridge if you've got Papercut in Cambridge as well. the quote that came back there, our immediate advice is to upgrade your papercut application servers to one of the fixed versions listed if you haven't done so already. Again, under active exploitation. And this one again was reported by Trend Micro. The great thing there, though, is that one made it out into the wild very quickly the moment the patches dropped. And people were very quickly finding ways to go and exploit it. Bam! Loads of problems. And of course, this one we're publishing out to the internet, right? We're going to publish our papercut server so our students can go and upload their papers, go and upload their things for printing. And we're actively doing that. The final one, and quite possibly the most annoying one, is the Avanti Connect Secure vulnerability. So this is a VPN appliance. Again, something that you're actively going to publish out to the internet. And this one that apparently has been traced back to Chinese nation-state threat actors. Apparently, because we can never be totally sure about these things. But one vulnerability was discovered, and that was discovered already under exploit. No one knew about it. That was being happily exploited. And then suddenly, bam, someone discovers it. And then we go and discover a load more vulnerabilities after that as well. Again, this one allows the threat actor to go and bypass all authentication mechanisms. I don't care if you've got MFA. I don't care if you've got fancy certificate-based stuff. If you could get to the web console, guess what? You now owned that appliance. A quick search on Shodan, and you can still find vulnerable appliances. There was one very particular water company quite close to the Thames that for quite some time seemed to be vulnerable to this one still. The crazy thing about this one, of course, is a VPN appliance. You're regularly submitting credentials to it. So what the threat actors were doing here is compromising the box, getting remote code execution, and then going and stealing usernames and passwords in plain text, because of course the box knew what those passwords were. They were also starting to drop web shells onto there as well. So the ability to remotely control that appliance from the internet is a very trivial way for it. Loads of good links here, so when this repo goes live, go have a read about that. So, do you need to worry about this? Yes, of course you do, because that's the wonderful world of security. You need to worry about everything. Except for you don't too much. So when it comes to worrying about it, usually it's a case of these things are very easy to find. These systems are very, very easy to find, courtesy of systems like Shodan and likes. So we can plug in a search query into Shodan and say, show me all the Fortinet firewalls. We give you all the Fortinet firewalls. Show me all the papercut appliances. Show you all the papercut appliances. Down to the degree that this little query here, if it loads, there we go, searching a chunk of the University of Oxford address space. I think that might be Cambridge as well. I can't remember. 7,000 services that it can easily find. And you can have a scroll through this, and a lot of this is just junk and rubbish. A lot of it is firewalls saying, no, you can't talk to me. And sometimes it's a papercut appliance. So, do we need to actually worry about this? Well, it's the third most common form of attack that leads to other things, according to the Verizon Data Breach Investigations report. So credential capture, phishing, all those kinds of things. Your top two types of attacks usually start with credential capture and then use of those credentials or phishing. The third type is then exploiting some kind of vulnerability to go and gain access to an organization. If you've got MFA, and you've all got MFA on your VPN appliances now, yes? No one's just logging in with username and password. Resounding yes, okay. Note that down. You're probably going to be okay from credential. If you are using strong authentication, and by strong authentication I mean not text message, not TOTP, not HOTP, not even number matching on your phone, but strong authentication, ideally with a hardware security key, you're probably going to be safe from phishing, leaving your next major worry to be the exploit of vulnerabilities in your systems. So, the way that I see it, it's all about buying time. One of the ways that we can buy time is to figure out what are the threat actors up to once they compromise a system. So we're not necessarily going to know anything about the zero-day vulnerability. That's the nature of a zero-day vulnerability. But we do know what happens next. So in the case of the Log4Shell vulnerability, our initial access here, as we can see drawn from the MITRE attack matrix, and those of you who will remember last year's presentation by me, we went into the MITRE ATT&CK matrix in great detail. And for our YouTube videos, I'll put the post to the video in the top right corner or something silly. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. So initial access is going to be exploiting the application, exploiting the vulnerabilities that we've got. But we then see threat actors do other predictable things. So they're going to use command line tools. They're going to execute something that's new. They might go and exploit another vulnerability in another system, and they need some method of establishing command and control as well. So we'll see some traffic that's unique going out to the internet. In the case of Papercut, we saw the threat actors go and use PowerShell, go and again execute command scripts. And in fact, if you look at the Papercut article on this, they will give you a list as known indicators of compromise as the different types of commands, as the different URLs, as different domains that threat actors were seen reaching out to once they compromised a system. In the case of that Papercut vulnerability, we also saw the threat actors go and change things. So they changed the password for the admin account, perhaps in an attempt to prevent other threat actors from going and exploiting that same system. They went and escalated their privileges. They went and again established those command and control channels, and perhaps even finished it off with a nice ransomware attack. In the case of the Avanti Connect Secure, very similar. Dropping web shells, exploiting privileges, running commands on the system, perhaps capturing the inputs off those credentials as they go through the system. But also at the very end there, that element of command and control. We have seen them establish previously unseen, unknown connections out to systems on the internet. Now the thing is, as with all things in the wonderful world of cybersecurity, no one protection is going to save you. You cannot buy you a thing that will stop zero-day vulnerabilities, but you can do a series of things to help. One of those things is going to be hide. Seriously, it works. Just hide, right? If you have systems which need to be accessible from the internet, can you put them all behind a VPN? Hide all those systems by a VPN. That might be a VPN with a web portal. And that way, instead of just securing one, or instead of securing multiple places in and out of your network, you only have to secure one, that VPN. Next up, block access to and from known malicious. I'm going to give you some lists of places that you can go to go and find part of that known malicious. Next, restrict opportunities for execution. So find ways, in particular on full operating systems, so not necessarily applicable to appliances, but find ways to make it harder for the threat actors to actually run new things on your systems. Those of you from Oxford are already licensed for it. You just need to turn it on. And then strictly control your network traffic. That's not just into the appliance from the internet, but also out to the internet from the appliance, but also into the appliance from the inside of your networks. We'll have a look at the ways to do that. And then finally, limit the overall scope and impact of that threat actor. I have been to a few too many places now where they have one gigantic, nice /22 block of the internet, and that's one single network. And in there are domain controllers, file and print servers, and web servers, and VPN servers. And they're all swimming in the same subnet with no segmentation and segregation between them. Why is that still being done? There are plenty of trickery ways that we can make that still happen, so they're all still in the same subnet, and then secure the traffic between different devices. We'll have a look at that. Now, the thing to also bear in mind here is not all threat actors are the same. So I usually group them into 4 different levels here. The casual threat actors, hiding works against casual threat actors. They're just there scanning the internet, finding something easy to exploit. If you can hide from the casual threat actors, you don't need to worry about them. The determined low-skilled ones. So these are the ones that wake up in the morning and go, you know what? I'm after them today. Why? Because they're probably being paid. They've got a nice long list. And on that list, they're told, if you manage to get one of these, congratulations, here's 3,000, whatever it is that you use currency in your country. Bitcoins, yeah, that's a great way of getting paid, right? Our determined high-skilled ones, these are the ones with actual abilities to do things. These are the ones who are one, paid, but two, also have access to perhaps zero-day vulnerabilities, quite unlikely but possible, but are more likely to have known and easy ways of exploiting already vulnerable, already known vulnerabilities in systems. And then finally, of course, our nation states. Very few of you here will ever have to properly defend yourself against nation state threat actor. Those of you who do, good luck. Seriously, it's getting harder and harder out there now. So let's go into each of these in a bit more detail. Hiding. First, limit the inbound scope of your network connections. You might do this by country to start out with. And here I say, quite simply, why does that student portal need to be accessible from Afghanistan? Why does that student portal need to be accessible from Afghanistan? Because we have students in Afghanistan. How? So we're using the word might a lot here. Either way, our particularly sensitive systems, if we can, let's go and limit them by country. So your public-facing website, that might be accessible to all, including Afghanistan. Your payrolls management system, does that really need to be accessible from Afghanistan? Switzerland, yes, right? Switzerland, fine. Trust the Swiss bankers. But equally so, if we can go even more fine-grained than countries, let's consider even IP address blocks. So you can go and look up what the Janet address allocations are at the moment. You can go to this marvelous link here and it'll tell you what the address allocations are. Suck those into your firewall. Congratulations, your service is now accessible only from those on Janet. Or perhaps just the University of Oxford and Cambridge IP address spaces, or perhaps specific address spaces inside that region. Or, would you believe it, port knocking technology from the 1980s is still a thing. A very good way to hide. This is where you have to send a particular string, a particular set of commands to a network port before it will open up and present the actual service. That might be a case of send 12 pings. And if the service at the other end sees 12 pings coming at it from a particular source address, it will then present the service behind it. This is very old technology, but you know what? It works against the casual threat actors. Now, wherever possible, please consider, at bare minimum, hiding from unfriendly countries. So both the UK Treasury and the United States go and publish sanctions lists. So these are the lists of countries that we do not do business in. And in fact, you might even find that if you do business with those countries, that you're liable to a significant fine. So have a look at those lists. Go, you know what? Do we really need Iran to be accessing our services? No broad sweeping generalizations being made here, but seriously, do we need some countries to be able to access very specific services? We'll look at what a rule set for that might look like in just a second. So next up, block access from and to known malicious. So you'll probably find in your firewall there are a series of baked-in lists, a series of, these are known bad things, here be dragons. And on those lists, it will have ranges of seen brute forces, ranges of seen denial of service attack source addresses. And those lists will be updated on a semi-regular basis. Second one on the list here, firehole. If you have a pfSense firewall, you can ingest the firehole level 1 IP address block list. Now, if we go to that website, it says in great detail, this creates, we're not going to use that word, we use blocklist now, a safe enough to be used on all systems. So this is a series of known malicious IP addresses and known sources that you should never see traffic coming from, and you can just inject that into your firewall and say, drop all traffic from here. A couple of years ago, one of the institutions out in Oxford said, we're seeing a lot of spam hitting our public-facing website because they had a place where you could put comments. And although they had like anti-spam tools, they were still getting a lot of spam through to it. So on the Firehole website here, we had to scroll down, and down on one of these lists here, they've actually got one with known source addresses for spammers. They got loads of known source addresses here, in fact. We dropped a couple of those IP address lists in, and suddenly their spam was down to 1/10 of its norm. This is very old technology, deny lists, block lists, but it still works. Absolutely brilliant. So next up, start and maintain information sharing partnerships between you all. You are all generating data as to, I've seen a bad thing come from this IP address. Look for ways to share that information. And in fact, as we, being AN Security, we're looking at working with a couple of our Oxford customers, and might even expand it out beyond that at some point as well, to see how we can use the IDS IPS information that's coming off their firewalls to share source addresses, share scene attacks between different customers, so that if one institution within Oxford gets a hit, there was something bad that came from this address, that can be shared in near real time with everyone else. And so everyone else can be protected by that information as well. Now, equally so, everyone thinks URL filtering. No, we can't limit academic freedoms. What academic freedom does your VPN server have? Consider on your VPN server, consider on your web servers. Let's go and make a list of all the places it's been seen going to before. GitHub, Apache download pages, the repos for Ubuntu and the likes. Let's go and make those and put them in an allow list and drop everything else, deny access to everything else. And that way, when your threat actor attempts to establish a connection out to one of their servers to download malicious tools onto that server, the network says no. Some very easy to use URL categories up there: command and control, hacking, malware, all these brilliant things. Newly registered domains. How often does a web server need to reach out to a newly registered domain? And that's that web server establishing an outbound connection. And then finally, alert on your attempts to access something malicious. And this is when we start to really get down to, let's have that canary that we're taking down into the mine. If that canary starts falling over in a sideways manner, we've got something going wrong here. So the moment you see a server reach out to something that it's never reached out to before, you get an alert, you get a report, you get something that says there's abnormal activity on there. And that abnormal activity might be an indicator that a threat actor has gone and exploited a zero-day vulnerability on that service, and they're now attempting to do those later steps. We might not be able to stop that initial access, but you know what? There are plenty of ways to stop those later steps. Now, we receive into our mailboxes once a day at the beginning of the day a nice little report which tells me, have our backups worked? Do we have any security certificates expiring? And also, what's the latest on vulnerabilities inside our infrastructure? Oh no, one medium. We'll go and fix that one day. At the top of that is helpful links to our log management server to say, click here, and you can go and see all the access attempts against the system. You can just have a casual browse through those. So equally so, even if all you do is once a day, you go have a look at the logs, was there anything new and unusual seen? That's going to be a very helpful way to detect and prevent these zero-day attacks. So, restrict opportunities for execution. Been round and we've done a lot of security reviews for institutions recently, and a common theme seems to be, oh yeah, we've installed Sophos everywhere. And I go, everywhere? And they say, yes. And I say, okay, show me where Sophos is installed on this Linux web server. And they go, oh, it's not installed on there. So you haven't installed Sophos everywhere. No. So yes, Sophos anti-malware agent will indeed go on your Linux web servers. Please install it there as well. In particular, if you're not doing inbound decryption to that service and using the anti-malware features on your file. Because all you need to do is host on that web server a file upload ability, a file submission ability, or perhaps even a poorly coded web form. And guess what your threat actor is going to do? They're going to drop a web shell into there, which is typically a single file web page. They're going to find where it's now stored on the server and execute it. And that likely executes with the same level of permission that the web server is running at. And sometimes, in particular, when you've poorly managed your web server, that's going to be root. That web server is no longer your web server. That's now the threat actor's web server. Now, when it comes to establishing baselines, on Windows, this is quite easy within my experience. There are loads of tools, in particular AppLocker, which is linked further down here, which you can use to go and say, tell me every single executable you've seen running on this system in the last year. And it will give you a load of Windows event logs, and you can go through those and say, all of this is sanctioned. On Linux, I understand there is indeed a feature built in to do that, but I'm not much of a Linux admin. So one of you out here, at least one of you, is a Linux admin. So at the end of this presentation, please reach into this repo and say, this is how you do it on Linux, because I would love to know. There are paid for services for this as well, of course. Now, once we've established that baseline, we're going to prevent the execution of everything else. And in fact, again, we're going to bring that canary down into the mine that is cybersecurity. And if that canary starts saying, someone's trying to run something new, you can go, maybe a threat actor has jumped onto that server, they've downloaded some malware, and now they're trying to execute it. Again, giving you that early warning opportunity, so you can go, something wrong here, let's go and investigate further. Now, of course, this isn't necessarily something that you can always do. Embedded appliances, you can't always go and actually investigate the operating system that's on them. You can't go and investigate the software that's running on them. But what you might find is that the vendor has an integrity checker. So this might be a tool that's run on the appliance or run remotely to the appliance, and it will go and scan the file system of that appliance using the vendor-provided tool and say, here are the deviations from norm, or here are the deviations from the files that I would expect to see there. In the case of most firewalls, FortiGate, Palo Alto Networks, they run their integrity checker on boot up. They will also run it periodically as well, depending on the way the firewall is configured as well and what mode it's in. So see if you can find what integrity checker options you have. In the case of the Avanti vulnerability, when they went and compromised all those VPN servers, Avanti went and published an integrity checker, which was then found to not check all the relevant files. So they're not always perfect, but again, at least it's something for it. Now, when we are indeed at times of high risk, and in particular before performing system upgrades, again, see if you can run those integrity checker tools. One little piece of advice, rebooting appliances on a regular interval. When it comes to at times of high risk, if you have any possibility of being able to extract the memory from that appliance, and again, that's going to be your full operating systems, do that before you reboot it. And just squirrel it away somewhere. Now, although none of you, or perhaps some of you, have the ability to go and do memory analysis, but by having that big blob of system memory saved somewhere, if you do later find that that appliance was compromised, will be very, very, very useful to the person who goes and does the later investigation. Velociraptor is a brilliant tool for that. Go and have a Google search of Velociraptor. So next up, buying time. Number 4, strictly control network traffic. Loads of different ways you can do this, of course. So IP address, domains, URLs, applications, ports. But most of this, to be honest, is completely junk without decryption. So unless you are inspecting the traffic at the network level and decrypting it to and from that appliance, things like application recognition are almost useless. Because when it comes to that log4j vulnerability, you might say, yes, log4j, they just establish an outbound LDAP connection. We'll just say block outbound 636 and 389, yes? The horrible truth there is there's no reason for the threat actor not to have a LDAP server on the internet running over port 443. And unless you decrypt that traffic from that appliance out to the internet, you won't be able to see that they're using LDAP. So if you want to do those kinds of protections, it's not saying that not decrypting isn't, worth it, but decrypt. And then you get the visibility. I'm not saying don't decrypt your academics traffic. I'm just saying decrypt the traffic outbound to the internet and indeed inbound from the appliances, from the servers, the things which are not used interactively. The little 2 demonstration screenshots from up here show you how a Linux web server will respond before and after a security certificate is dropped onto it for decryption. There are effectively just 2 commands that you need to run on a Ubuntu Linux web server to go and set up decryption. It is insanely easy. So once they've got that decryption enabled, guess what? We can now detect a humongous list of web shells, rolling straight into that server. So even if you haven't gone installed anti-malware agents onto your web server, because we're decrypting the traffic into it, we can let the anti-malware service inside the firewall go and save you, go and do some form of inspection to detect these web shells, detect these crypto miners going onto your systems. So I'm cognizant of time. Let's skip through some bits here. Finally, DMZs. Why did they disappear? 1990s, we were great at DMZs. They were everywhere. You didn't design a network without a DMZ. We seem to have come full circle and everything's back to being flat networks. If you must have all your systems in the same layer 2 subnet, because you must, come have a chat with me after the presentation and I will let you know how we can do some trickery with modern firewalls so that you can still control at the network level traffic between systems. You call it VLAN splicing. It's really cool. So when it comes to writing these network rules, we've got the big bad internet at the top. We're permitting traffic into our systems, into our DMZ, and we're also permitting the traffic from the DMZ into our other servers. One point to note here. On your systems, configure the local firewall so it doesn't enable or allow inbound connections from the local subnet. That way, if a threat actor has managed to compromise one system in a subnet, their opportunities for skipping over to another system in the same subnet are greatly reduced. And in fact, what I would suggest you go and do is set up some form of management computers network zone. We've done this quite a lot recently, in fact, whereby from that network, you have a series of virtual machines or perhaps even physical machines that you administer your systems from. And that's the only place that's allowed to talk over remote desktop, to talk over SSH, for instance. And in fact, there are also really cool ways that I've got a demo of that we can allow multi-factor authentication at the network level, not the application level, at the network level into that management zone. Now, I'm just going to call out this amazing video on the repo. It's about an hour long from a Microsoft presenter in 2016. And it seems to be a bit of a dodgy copy uploaded to YouTube, but it is the best resource I have ever seen on how the Windows client firewall works. It's an hour long and you will be completely enthralled with it all the way through. Have a good watch. So let's go and secure some devices. So let's start out with a wireless LAN controller, a physical or virtual appliance. We can't install agents on it because it's a box which we don't have any other underlying operating system access to. There's no access to detailed logging unless we're the vendor itself. I was trying to get one of these to do outbound decryption. Although it will do it out to things like an LDAP server, it won't do it out to the internet, so we can't even decrypt the traffic. And quite often these systems now have like 8-core, 16-core processors in, 64 gigs of RAM. They're a threat actor's dream. But they all run CentOS 7. And they probably will continue until the end of time. So let's go and secure it. First, strict outbound URL filtering. We're going to look at the URLs that server is reaching out to on the internet through our network firewall, and we're going to put an allow list in, and we're going to say, you can get to all of those places. And that way, when the threat actor tries to go to badactor.com, firewall looks at that and says, no, you can't go there, drop that connection. And even better, as I was saying earlier, get a report either immediately or at least once a day that gives you all these connection attempts. Tells you all the times that that system attempted to reach out to somewhere malicious. What we can do, however, is do decryption into the appliance. We can't install a anti-malware agent on that appliance, but we do have access to the private key for the web management console. So from our management zone into that appliance, from the internet into that appliance, let's go and decrypt the traffic. And in fact, there is a nice little upload file link inside this particular brand of wireless controller, where all you do is you change it to Ximage, and you can upload whatever you like into there. It reaches the appliance, and the appliance says, yes, I'll go and install that update, or it says, no, I won't do that. But in this case, because we're decrypting the traffic into it, the firewall has just seen that we've just tried to drop a web shell into there. And the firewall is now saying no at the network level. That file hasn't even made it to the appliance. Those last couple of bytes never made it over. And suddenly, a threat actor attempting to exploit a vulnerability in that system can't. So, our next one, a Linux web server. Here we can install agents. Please install anti-malware on your Linux servers. It really works. No, they're not safe. Nothing is. Deployed decryption. It works. It's not a user's machine. Right? I've changed tact in here because it's slowly working. I've got nearly double-digit people inside Oxford who are doing some form of decryption. I don't know if any of them want to talk publicly, but some of them are here in the room. No. We do have full underlying access to the operating system. And of course, because it's a full operating system, of course, it's going to give the threat actor lots of room to move. So let's go and set up some firewall rules to help us. Top set of rules there. This is Palo Alto Networks firewall. They have the notion of bulletproof IP addresses, high risk, no malicious, the Tor exit nodes, and I've also put in firehole in there. So this is the known bad stuff. There is nothing good coming out of these IP addresses. And in fact, it's high fidelity information. We can almost be totally certain that there's only bad stuff there. So that's our very first rule. Our next rule, allow inbound access to the www site of our college, of our institution. After that, we've then got a series of 4 countries that we're going to deny access to. So if you're in Afghanistan, China, Iran, and Russia, and in reality that list can be a lot longer, we're just going to say, no, you don't get to see our stuff exists. You might think the threat actors are smart and they'll hop through a VPN into your country. Yes, but not all of them are that smart. The casual threat actors won't do that. Let's keep ourselves away, at least from the casual threat actors, if nothing else. So then we've got our 4th rule, permit access to other websites. Our 5th rule, permit access to our VPN. We're only allowing from GB. We're only allowing from the United Kingdom. And you might have, for instance, a form somewhere on your intranet that says, I'm going on holiday, I'd like to use the VPN. So that when your head of house, or whatever they call themselves these days, goes out to Spain in their villa, they can complete your form, a firewall rule gets dropped in that says allow Spain for the next 2 weeks. Right? Nice simple way of handling that. And then of course drop all other inbound connections. Now earlier I said if we've got our DMZ zones and we're going to have some internal traffic, let's decrypt that traffic. The reason being is you might think, you know what, if someone's trying to brute force me, I'm probably going to get an alert. And you know what? If you've got a decent log management system that's configured correctly, you will. But how many of you have a decent log management system that's configured correctly? Right? Okay, yes, calm down. Right? But, again, built into a lot of next generation firewalls are the detections for brute force attacks. And these will scream very loudly, drop into your mailbox, drop into your daily report, I've seen a LDAP, an HTTP, or whatever, brute force attack. Leverage those features, but those features only work if you have decryption enabled. So, final thing, this is the, ooh, I didn't know you could do that, James. Network level multi-factor authentication. We use this inside the AN Security Firewall Managed Service because we're paranoid as hell. Because if we as a security company get breached, guess what? It'll make the news and no one will ever trust us again. Hello to AM security. Right? So we have a series of rules that say, for instance, admins can access the web server. They can access it over any port, any application, but when they try to log into it, PuTTY says no, failed connection. Now, if we have a look inside the firewall logs, we say auth policy denied. So although the firewall rule might permit connections to it, we have to hop through an authentication policy first. So next, we go to a web page. That web page is hosted inside that protected zone. That web page is intercepted by the firewall, and it redirects me, in this case, to Duo. Prompts me to authenticate. I enter my email address, I go through an MFA code, and guess what? I can now connect to my server. So the firewall at the network level has wrapped MFA around a service that we might not necessarily otherwise be able to protect with MFA. So if you have insert building management system vendor that I'm not going to name, where the maximum password length is 8 characters because arbitrary reasons, wrap this around it, and guess what? You've now got MFA around your boiler management system that was designed in 1992 by a person who has long died. Right? I didn't. So, key takeaways. 1, please do some geo-blocking, even if it's just for your VPN, even if it's just for your particularly sensitive systems. Perhaps even if it's only at times when we know threat actors are going and exploiting particular vulnerabilities. Leverage those trustworthy block lists. Go and leverage the Firehole Level 1 list. You can even inject it into a pfSense firewall. Install anti-malware everywhere, including Linux. Restrict those inbound and outbound connections as much as you possibly can. And then finally, please, 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 please do decryption. It works. Yes, it works with TLS 1.3. No, don't believe the people who tell you that it doesn't. I've configured it. I've made it work. It's effective. That's all from me. I'm probably extremely out of time now. However, as any of you will know, I have goodies for my presentations, for really good questions. So, criteria of really good question. 1, I go, ooh. 2, it's not can I have a security key by Yubico. And 3, it's relevant to the presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Go on. Boo. Yes, port knocking, but designed in 2020. Come get your YubiKey. Woo! It's not actually a YubiKey, sorry, it's a security key by Yubico. There's a difference because not so recently I went to somewhere and I said, buy YubiKeys. And they went and bought security keys by Yubico. There's a difference. Next one.
It's a comment rather than a question. Don't need a key.
Okay, I won't go ooh.
Or rather 2 questions. Well, 2 things.
Carry on, Stan.
One of them is for your geo-blocking.
Yes.
People might, for your page, it might be useful to reference Bogon and Martian lists.
So those are included in Firehole Level 1.
Okay, cool. So those
yes.
are included and you can just ping them either
yep.
on firewall or by the edge, because then it won't hit your firewall and you'll be blocking things
yes.
before it gets closer to your system.
Yeah.
And the second one is RPZ zones. Did you mention them? I missed it or not?
No, go ahead.
So you can get reverse policy zone feeds for DNS.
Yep.
And if your DNS service supports it, they will automatically be able to redirect queries to either malicious actors or to anything that you don't want your users to see to that node.
Yep.
That should give them a message along the lines that you shouldn't be looking at that.
Yeah, so built into most network firewalls at the DNS level, they have a notion of sinkholing, which is basically the same. If you see a malicious DNS request go out, return another IP address in the response, and at the end of that IP address is a web page that says, no, bad idea. I've seen Oxert use that within Oxford, actually, which is quite powerful technology. You had a question at the back there, go ahead. Yes. So ooh, there you go. You have your security key. Web balancers quite often have IDS, IPS services built into them. Here I've used a firewall, the network firewall, as a demonstration for it. But yeah, you can get a website load balancer as well that will have decryption as a feature, will have IDS, IPS services as a feature. So yeah, a valid way of handling it. Was there anything else to your point there? Yeah, it's a matter of if it's licensed, right? So it's one of the things that I hate the most is I go somewhere and they've bought £20,000 worth of firewall and £60,000 worth of licenses over 5 years to put on that firewall, and the processor on the firewall says 6%, right? And I'm like, you've bought X amount of firewall and you're using 6% of it, you are getting 6% of the value of that firewall. Now, I'm not saying run your firewalls at 100% utilization. That's a bad idea. But enable those features. Do decryption, right? Look, I've heard from many people recently, IDS IPS is the worst. It doesn't work. It doesn't see anything. Well, it can't without decryption. Come get your security key. Go on, anyone else? Go on.
You mentioned about sharing information with departments or colleges, etc.
Yes.
A while ago, at one of these conferences, we had...
Yes, the NSA guy, the spook. Yes.
Brilliant idea. None of us could afford it.
No.
We did a trial in Cambridge. A few colleges got on board, but it just would not be sustainable. Is there anything that that's open source that you do something
right.
we can start setting up these things where if I see something dodgy, I can add it to my firewall or a list somewhere, which would then automatically update other colleges' firewalls because they trust my decision.
So let me see if I can find it. Threat share. So there is a project called MISP, M-I-S-P, which is really good for that. The problem with MISP is it takes a lot of infrastructure to make it work. And the installer for it is what I would call a Linux person installer, as in that I'm a Windows installer and I'm fine with next, done. And I'm fine with installing like Greylog, right? That's really easy. Just next, you're done. That installer, it seems to break every time, no matter what I do or no matter how many chickens I sacrifice. Yes, goats works better. So what I'm starting, and this is probably the first time anyone's seen this page because again it's private at the moment. I had a chat a couple of weeks ago with a series of colleges and departments within Oxford that are our customers at the moment and said, hey guys, would this be of interest to you? And they were all on a very particular firewall platform because I knew it would be easy to share information from it. So what I'm working on, and will distribute hopefully to those people within the next month or so, is the prototype for a way of doing that. So lots of firewalls these days have the ability to either generate a syslog message or an HTTP message. And one of my thoughts there is, okay, let's generate an HTTP post message into a Node-RED server. Again, another presentation from a couple of years ago, like, share, subscribe. I'll put the link up in the corner. Node-RED is a marvelous way of transferring data between systems. And the notion there I had was, why don't we allow other colleges, other departments, other institutions to then subscribe to a feed from that which they can inject in their own firewalls? Great thing about that model is it's decentralized. No single person has control over it. You can just absorb information from whenever you like. In all seriousness, in about a month's time, I should have a beta version of this ready. And after that, the users of it are welcome to go and share this as far and wide as they like. It will work with Palo Alto Networks firewalls, and I plan to make it work with FortiGate as well, because there's lots of both of those out there. Right, okay. This presentation I've licensed under something or other that makes it free and open source. What was it? One of the Creative Commons ones. Yeah, Creative Commons. And Threat Share. This will be done using company time. Company time is happy for me to license under the MIT license. Right? So once that repo goes live, once we've done some testing, if anyone else wants to use it, deploy it themselves, rip the name off it and put, yes, Bob's software instead of James's software, feel free. Shush, Cambridge in the back. So yes, work are happy for me to do this on the condition that I have nothing else more important to do, like, I don't know, generating money for the company. So yes, key, come get your key. Final one. Go on then. Really cool service. So it's just outbound DNS connections, just really ship it through PDNS. So obviously you need to be eligible for it. I think in the case of academia, you need to get it through Janet Direct, is that correct? Yes, so PDNS, for those of you not familiar, protected DNS service available from National Cybersecurity Centre. The marvellous people who have also brought you nothing whatsoever because they can't tell you about it. But they have a range of really good services, including PDNS, which, as I understand, you need to get through Janet. GIS, Oxford GIS, there we go. But really powerful service, and I've seen it block things which even the next generation firewall vendors haven't detected, just because the source of that information is a big donut shape. big donut shape, which we shall not mention on YouTube because they'll track me down and God knows what. Do you want a YubiKey for that? That's the last one, I think, because you've got one to get and you've got one. We done? Any other questions? Go ahead.
So imagine there was someone in the audience running one of these VPNs without multi-factor authentication.
Yes.
Sorry?
For asking for a friend.
Not the university friend, obviously.
Yes.
What would be the recommended best practice to add multi-factor authentication? You've got this like network level wrapper. Right?
Yep.
You click on the web page and say, okay, I've done a 0MFA, let me in.
Yep.
That sounds a bit big mouse to me. Like,
Okay.
what's the best practice?
Right. So the very pinnacle, I see it in two different ways. One, if you have a managed machine, use security certificates, BitLocker drive encrypt the machine, and have that security certificate burnt into the TPM chip. When the machine...
That's still only one factor.
Well, one is the security certificate and one is the fact that it's a managed laptop. There are follow-on factors that you can configure as well. So when that machine is unlocked, the TPM access or the TPM is accessible, the VPN client grabs the security certificate, presents it to the VPN server, and it says, I am who I claim to be. It authenticates it cryptographically. And then I've also seen other ways of, for instance, the VPN client might go and say, now tell me what your Windows Update status is. Now tell me what your anti-malware status is. Let's go and do a series of health checks against that machine as well. And that way we've not only validated the identity, but we've also validated that the machine is indeed health checked and okay to proceed. The second way for user interactive, so this is where you have unmanaged machines, there ship it through something via SAML2, and ideally authenticate the user with strong authentication or phishing resistant authentication. So Windows Hello, so passkeys, right? That's the name everyone seems to have branded for it. Windows Hello is a form of strong authentication, cannot be phished. Because not only are you presenting your fingerprint, the software behind it is also authenticating that the service at the other end is indeed the service that it claims to be. You can't go and present your Windows Hello biometric unlock to a service that the system doesn't trust. Right? That's really powerful technology. Or indeed a hardware security key. There are other options for that, such as MFA via security key with certificates. So old smart card technology, that works quite well as well. That's the absolute pinnacle. For that, I would say your administrators, at a minimum, those who have privileged access to systems, when they authenticate through MFA, should be going through phishing-resistant forms. They should be using biometric unlock or a hardware authenticator. For your average user, unless they have access to particularly sensitive systems, really anything that's not SMS or TOTP based is okay at the moment. The final group that you might have is your like contractors and the likes, and their username, really long password, only enable the account when it's necessary. It is usually what I go to. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yep. Last chance. So you've got a key, you've got a key. That's the last two I've got. Go ahead.
So you were talking about like daily emails.
Yes.
How do you stop that being security?
Daily. Make them daily. Yeah. So this is the matter of where it comes down to your appetite for risk. Now, if you have a really low appetite for risk, and by that I mean you have gone and bought a security operations center and they will follow up immediately on any alerts, that costs a lot of money. That you might not ever be able to really do unless you are a bank, right? That level. If you're got a low to moderate, that's where you get it pushed into a Teams channel and you get an alert the moment it happens. And maybe you action it immediately, but you probably action it a little bit later. The place that I see being the bare minimum is that daily, perhaps once a week, tops. Right? I know some people within Oxford who have the alerts email once a day. It's delivered to them at 8:50. And as they're getting off the bus, they're there having a read of it on their phone. Right? I know some people who once a week get an email which shows all the bulk transfers of data to and from the network. And that's once a week. And that tells them, oh, XYZ user used a lot of Dropbox over the last week. And that's their opportunity to go, oh, that's a bit unusual. I'll go investigate what happened there. It's not a nice email. But it's your risk appetite that defines that. If you've got really low, you go and pay X amount of money to a security operations center. If it's moderate, get an email once a day, once a week, tops for it. But it's your risk appetite that defines that. Or farm it out to someone else. that answer your question?
Yeah, I think how to get good content.
Yes.
I think they have like to be state, that's fine.
Yep.
It's like what techniques can you get the content that to be.
Yeah, so there it's a matter of most IDS IPS services, which that kind of content would be driving it, is we need to vacate. There it's a matter of they will generate a severity level. Look at the highs and criticals first. We need to leave. Thank you all. Thank you.